Welcome to the Seeing Red podcast with Andy Turner and Garrett Fools, checking up on Texas policies and politics with some federal issues thrown in, like the assault weapons ban, interest rate hikes, you get it, but it's mostly Texas, since we can't ignore the big stuff either. And now, here are your hosts, Andy Turner and Garrett Fools.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Seeing Red. This is our last episode for the 2023 year. We are, as probably most of you are, preparing for the holidays. Some of you are in the middle of Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah. Most of you are probably preparing for Christmas, and we seriously hope you have a lovely Christmas and a wonderful New Year. We will be back on January 10th, which just happens to be Garrett's birthday, so you'll want to tune in for that. And, make sure on January 10th that you reach out on Facebook.com/The Seeing Red Pod and wish him a happy birthday. YouTube.com/Seeing Red Pod, the Seeing Red Pod. Twitter at The Seeing Red Pod. You can always go to seeingredpodcast.com and either email us or at hosts@seeingredpodcast.com or just fill out the form. And you can listen straight from the website. That's how you reach us. Keep those, what did they used to say? Keep those cards and letters coming. We love them. So we're going to get started with this last episode, and but wanted to wish you all a Merry Christmas.
And a Happy New Year.
How's it going? And a Happy New Year. How's it going? How's the baby?
The baby is doing great. He is quite loud and has very firm opinions on how things should be done. I have no idea where he gets that from. I have no idea.
Well, I'll just leave that alone and just say to you, well, he's got good lungs.
Yeah, he does. His lungs are quite healthy. Oh, man. No, but he's doing good. He's a good little guy. It's fun to just watch him grow every day. But, still in that stage where he doesn't do much yet. He just kind of lays there and eats and then sleeps and then yells. And then eats and sleeps and poops and eats and sleeps. And
Sweetie, for all of us who have had babies in their house, infants in their house, we know. You'll be okay. This too shall pass.
Yeah. So it's fun.
All right. So for the last episode of the year, we should talk about what's new in Texas politics, policy, and the rest.
Oh, sure. I mean, there was some news that came out early this week about Tim Dunn, the financier of a lot of these organizations we've been talking about for the past year. He's the primary donor for Defend Texas Liberty PAC and a lot of these other groups, and formerly Empower Texas, now Texas Scorecard. He's just a big-time donor. He just sold he's in the process of selling his company to Occidental Oxy, the oil company, for a valuation of $12 billion. It looks like it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $9 billion in cash plus extra in shares. So he's going to have a little bit more money to be a little bit more liquid and a little bit more able to throw his cash around. So it's going to be interesting to see what's going on there. But it's interesting to see him doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm sure that's not his only company. I mean, usually these guys with the $1 million companies, they have other things, other sources.
I don't know, because I think he built this one from the ground up. I think this was his main thing. It's not like, I don't think he's not like an heir or something where they have.
Oh, no. I just usually they invest in other smaller companies, so that if, the worst happens, your main source of income. Yeah. So that'll be interesting.
But I think he mostly invests in conservative, quote unquote, causes. He spends a lot of money on Texas, and he's been kind of see if he tries to take on a national profile.
Yeah, I actually wrote a note to Texas Scorecard the other day. They came out with this piece about red flag laws, and they explained that it's designed to keep people from buying firearms. And but and some of our listeners may know, I happen to be an expert in the Second Amendment. And so I wrote him an email and explained, no, that's not at all what the purpose is. And explained, and he was, whoever it was nice enough to respond and say, oh, gee, thanks, I'll pass this along to the reporter. But it's like, you misreported that. You need to, fix it. And, I check out Texas Scorecard and I don't see any fixing, but okay, I'm not tracking you down to go see if you altered the article, but like check your facts. Facts are important. And I realize that Texas Scorecard is much further right than I am, which is why I read it, because I like differing opinions. But, if you don't understand the issue, get somebody on the phone that does. It doesn't have to be me. There are plenty of 2A experts in this state. Good Lord. So,
well, they work really,
anyway,
really closely with Texas Gun Rights. So I'm not sure how you feel about that organization, but that's kind of where they're getting their stuff from usually.
I don't know who's running Texas Gun Rights these days, but I have to say they didn't check with Texas Gun Rights when they wrote the story. I mean, it absolutely, there's no way they did. Like I said, I don't know who's running TGR these days, but if they're telling people that red flag laws are about keeping people from buying guns, that is absolutely not what it's about. It's about confiscation. So,
well, maybe a little bit of both, though, right? Because if you have a red flag law, at first it's going to be used.
They're not. When they try to sell, when the progressives try to sell red flag laws, it's about removing the guns from your home, and there's no. I will be honest with you. I have not read every red flag law out there, but they get your guns. I don't know of anything that prevents you from going and buying another one. Now, there may be some red flag out, but as a topic of conversation, it really doesn't affect your ability to purchase. They collect, and then you have to go to court to get it back. So if you go out and buy one afterwards, I'm not sure the local police know to come and get that one too. So, which is another problem with red flag laws, you and I, you've heard me rant about this before, but it's a governmental taking before you have your day in court. Like, they have a whole trial and they don't, not a whole trial, but they get up in front of the judge and make their case, and you're not even consulted, notified in any way, shape, or form. It's, she's bad, she's dangerous, and if you get the right judge and they buy off on it, the first time you know about it is when the police show up at your door and confiscate. And in my case, they would take Peter's guns too, because they would not take the time to take a look at what belongs to him and what belongs. So they're taking his, and he's not the problem. And I have obviously huge problems with not, you not being able to defend yourself in front of the judge before they take your property. So anyway, I digress.
Sure. Yeah, no, everything when it comes to the gun stuff, it seems like there's like the public relation, like it's like at most political issues, right? It's the public relations kind of what happens on TV arguments, and then it's like the actual machination arguments behind the scenes, and they almost never match up, especially when it comes to guns. I mean, it's like the whole Democrat talking point, take your assault weapons. And it's like, what the hell does that even mean? You have to define it. Legally speaking, you need to define that. And it's like, oh, the scary one. It's like, because it's painted black?
Broader stripes than that. Define an assault weapon. A Louisville Slugger is an assault weapon.
Sure.
A dinner knife is an assault weapon. So, it sounds really good, but I have no patience for it. Don't get me started on 2A. I'll go off for the rest of the show.
Fair enough. Well, there's also, you have Tim Dunn over there in that enterprise world selling his company, but you also have another company making moves, Pale Horse, of ill repute at the moment. Yeah. The political consulting, like, business arm of the Defend Texas Liberty, which I believe is owned in whole or in part by former Representative Stickland, who's the one who's supposed to have met with Nick Fuentes. has changed its name to the West Fort Worth something. They changed its name, but not really. If my understanding is correct, it's a DBA. It's a 10-year DBA for the company. It's still Pale Horse. It's just they'll be doing business as this other company. So like,
So basically, they want to change their name because of the notoriety out of Pale Horse and what happened with Defend Texas Liberty. Is that?
I'm not going to.
I'm saying that's a theory.
Yeah, that's. If you have a good company name and brand name, you don't want to go and change it. I mean, maybe they're doing two different things. Maybe they have the brand name for different types of work. That's common in all sorts of fields. But
Pale Horse has been around for a while, though, right?
Not really, like 3 years.
Yeah.
I think he's been out of the legislature now for 2 sessions, so about 3 years.
And now all of a sudden, after DTL, he wants to change the name that he's doing business as. So
It's crazy.
I will be very interested to see what happens here, because I think the timing. Let's put it this way: I don't know. I don't have facts, but I think everybody listening would agree that the timing is rather interesting.
Yeah, it's peculiar.
Especially in as much as, we've got an election coming up in March. And now suddenly, so I do not know. I just think let's put it this way. If they had asked me, I would have said, no, this isn't making you look good. So whatever their reason is, I would have told them, this is not the image. This is not the image that you want. So, but nobody asked me. They should, but they didn't.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because we kind of had our first preview of the next of what's going to happen in the primary. So we have there were a couple of special elections that have been happening. The first one was this past weekend. It's not really a special election. It was the runoff for the Houston. It was the runoff for the November general election, which was the nonpartisan races. And Houston had a number of races up, one of which was Council Seat G, which covers a good portion of like River Oaks and historically conservative portions of Houston, and not just Houston, of Texas. It's really where kind of the cradle of the Republican Party of Texas. It's where large portions of that overlap with where George H.W. Bush's congressional seat was that he won in the 60s, 70s. And so you have old school Republicans, a lot of people still there. And there was a conservative on the city council, and she was being challenged by Tony Busby, who our listeners will know was the main defense counsel for Attorney General Paxton in his impeachment trial. He was a former candidate for mayor in Houston, which is a nonpartisan race. He had run as a Democrat in the past, about 20 years ago, and also about 20 years ago he was the chairman of the Galveston County Democratic Party. So, he's also been involved with Trump in the Trump world and donating there, but also donating to Democrats all over Houston. So he's kind of somebody who is in it for Tony Busby. But Paxton endorsed him. He got some other endorsements, conservative endorsements like Mattress Mac, but he ended up losing by 12 points.
So Paxton endorsed his attorney in the impeachment trial, which, I mean, yeah, sure. That's smart. And he lost anyway. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
To a conservative. Backed by all the conservatives. And what's interesting is she's the daughter of a state rep currently, one of a Republican state rep.
Okay.
She's the daughter of Richard Hayes.
Oh, wait, I know Richard Hayes. I know his son.
Well.
Wow, it's a family affair.
Yeah. So that was the first. That's kind of the first thing. It's not a true litmus test because it's a nonpartisan race. There's other factors involved. The local Republican Party kind of forced the state party's hand and, made sure she got the endorsement from the party. which was big. It was a lot of good work on their part, so it wasn't a true matchup. The next real matchup, and it's not going to be more of an attorney general matchup, but just kind of a how things are heading. You have the Money versus Dutton special election in February up in East Texas. It's the election to fill Slayton's seat up in HD2. Now, what's interesting in that race is Money's endorsed by the whole cast of kind of enterprise characters, the people who had backed Slayton. He's also endorsed by Governor Abbott, which is interesting because usually Abbott in the past has endorsed against those candidates. And you have Jill Dutton, who's a solid person who's been endorsed by a bunch of folks too. That one's going to be a more interesting proxy fight kind of about what's going to happen. That's going to be more of an interesting proxy fight on kind of the school choice debate. Dutton has said she's pro school choice. People don't believe her for one reason or another.
I wonder why.
She's a former school board member from like a while ago.
Oh,
and I don't know if there's anything in that from her voting record, because I think if there was, I would have seen more. But basically, it just kind of feels like they don't trust. They want to make sure they have that vote.
Yeah, that's here's the thing though. To say that, and I'm not taking sides in this race. I have issue with the logic of their decision making in terms of school choice. To say, well, you were on a school board, therefore, of course you're lying about this. Well, I used to work for public schools. I also worked for private schools. I'm very much in favor of school choice. Just because I worked for public schools, the unions don't represent the teachers. They don't ask. Now Texas may be different. I have not taught in Texas, but I've asked my teacher friends across the country, does the union come to you and ask you like to fill out a survey on how you feel about these things? No. The resounding answer is no. The union goes forward and they do their stuff, and the teachers may or may not agree, and it doesn't matter. The union does what the union does. So, just because you worked for a public school system, and I wouldn't say that necessarily indicates, but if she's running on that, then, and she wins and she doesn't support it, then she's a liar. And that's not a good thing to be in politics. Your constituents are not going to reelect you. So don't run on something if you don't intend to be truthful about it.
Right. That's true. Well, and the thing is, like, I don't know, I imagine they both filed for the seat for the primary. So they'll, one of them will win in February. There's almost certainly not going to be another special. And then they'll also have to run immediately a month later for the primary for the same seat. So who the hell knows what's going to happen there. But so that's kind of what's happening with those elections. But there was also more elections in Houston. Senator John Whitmire beat U.S. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee resoundingly to become the next mayor of Houston. John Whitmire had been in the Texas legislature for 50 years. He'd been in the Senate for most of that time. He's the dean. They call him the dean of the Senate. That means he's the longest serving sitting senator.
And he's kind of check me if I could well be wrong, but my understanding is he's definitely not a hardcore progressive. He's more moderate.
Oh, by no means. But I mean, keep in mind he came up in the Democratic Party in Texas when there were a ton of conservatives still in the Democratic Party in Texas. He's been in the legislature since '72. He's not a conservative. It's not. I'm not going to say how
No. He's definitely left of center, but he's not the left progressive wing. He's more of a moderate Democrat. He believes in bigger government, more taxes, things like that. So, but as far as the sitting congresswoman, I don't know the woman. I've never met her, but was it Revolt? What was the Twitter handle?
Current Revolt.
Current Revolt at Current Revolt on Twitter posted an audio with her, and I've since read the text of it. And apparently she was quite frustrated with her staff, and the way she spoke to them, I was appalled. And she cussed them out and was nasty. And politics aside, You don't do that. These people are underpaid. They're there because they want to be there and they want to be working for you. Don't abuse them. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on Sheila Jackson.
Well, she's running for re-election now because the election for the runoff election for mayor was on Saturday, and the filing deadline to file for your seat to run again was on Monday, the following Monday. So she lost on Saturday, and now she's filing on Monday to be the congresswoman's longer, and she'll almost certainly win. This is the weakest she'll ever be, giving up your seat to go run for something else. But
well, she's lost some of the urban vote, that's for sure. But for those of you who are not the political nerds that Garrett and I are, we call this running from safety. So she knew if she'd become mayor, she knew that she had a good chance. If she lost, she had a good chance of winning her Congress seat back.
Yeah. And then, I want to talk a little bit more about Whitmire. Whitmire ended up getting a lot of support from conservatives in his race, but conservatives don't make up a lot of folks. He was just like the least bad option. And then a lot of people, he's been in the legislature for 50 years. A lot of people like him personally. Apparently he's a very affable guy that people get along with well in the Capitol. So there was a lot less. It's just one of those people, like, we know that guy at least. If something's going to happen, we at least know him. We like him. We don't like how he votes, but we like him as a person. So that's just kind of how that race panned out. Republicans also picked up a seat. They won 2 other seats. So they won Huffman's, but they won
in Houston.
Yeah, they held a couple seats in the Houston City Council, and they flipped one. And it was an at-large seat. Yeah. So, and they came really close to flipping another one. They lost by like a couple points. One they won by like 300 votes, which is crazy. So it was a good night for Houston Republicans and just general governance in Houston. Whitmire, I wanted to say, that's what I wanted to mention. He's a tough on crime. He ran on tough on crime. So it'll be good. I hope he does it. Where that's something that they can push through the Houston City Council to kind of actually, give a blueprint for the rest of these cities across the country of you actually do need to arrest people and, put in place some initiatives. One of the things the legislature passed recently was instead of the mayor having the power just to set the agenda, it takes 3. They've tried this. Austin's been doing this to some success recently. It takes 3 council members to sign on to something to add something to a council meeting agenda.
Okay.
Doesn't mean something's going to pass, but it means that the people can't just hide from the issue.
Also, it would keep stupid issues off the agenda because you need 3 people.
Yeah. You can't just have one person up there just like flooding it. You have to have some people saying, yeah, we want to put all this stuff on the agenda.
This is a really interesting, for me, this is really interesting. These outcomes are really interesting because Houston, like Austin, like Dallas, it's very blue territory, and most urban areas are. So it's really interesting to see that there's a more conservative movement going on down there. And I say down there because I live outside of Austin and Garrett lives in Houston. So, that's really interesting because normally in an urban city, if you're not running as a Democrat, you ain't winning. It doesn't matter. City council, mayor, whatever. It really doesn't matter. It's a rare thing to see this shift to the right. And it's wow. Like, go Houston.
Yeah. Absolutely. I saw that you had a magazine or something you wanted to talk about.
Oh, yeah. So I got my copy of Texas Monthly, and I do enjoy the magazine. I don't always agree with what they write, of course. But they did their Bum Steer of the Year award in this month's edition. And if you don't subscribe, you can pick it up at HEB and read the article. And who got the Bum Steer of the Year award? The Lieutenant Governor. They are not happy at all with the way the impeachment process went, and the threats and the way that after the impeachment was done, or after the impeachment process was finished, with the level of, well, they didn't say it, but I'll say it, nastiness coming out of Austin, and they pegged it to, and I thought it was interesting they didn't peg that on Ken Paxton, but rather than they did on Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. So I thought that was a really interesting choice. So you guys should check that out. And it should be at your, wherever you get your magazines. But I usually, before I subscribed, I got mine at HEB. So, you guys can get it at checkout and read the article. But it was a really interesting article. And if you're listening to this show, you'll probably be interested in the article.
Yeah, the bum steers are always, it's always a Republican. It's always somebody they don't like. It might have been the Democrat chair once because they're so ineffective, but that's more just because they're ineffective and not because they did something that the monthly doesn't like. Yeah, I mean, it's always kind of good to keep your finger on the pulse of what those folks are saying. I think Dan Patrick did beclown himself this year. But what's interesting to me for Patrick is he's going out here and making all these arguments against Dade Phelan and against the House. But the common denominator between Dan Patrick and the House is Dan Patrick, because he's been having these issues with Strauss. He had these issues with Bonin. Like, he has these issues with anybody on the other side because they're not just doing whatever the hell it is he wants them to do. So, I mean, I think
and he spoke to that. He spoke to that recently and said, well, I had my issues with former speakers of the House, but this is outrageous. And I'm like, I wish I had been here when he had those issues, because I would be willing to bet that he said some similar statement about each of the other speakers of the House. But it is not his job to tell the House what to do, and it is not the House job to tell the Senate what to do.
Well, he's the kind of politician that says that whenever he's campaigning will say, this is the most important election of our lifetime every time. He's a prone to hyperbole. You gotta keep in mind he's a journalist by trade, right? He knows how to. He's a TV journalist by trade, so he's one who knows kind of if it bleeds, it leads, and he's doing what he can to create a news hook. He's doing a good job of it, and he's out in front, and he may be disingenuous or not, but he's still getting the stuff printed. We're talking about what he's saying. We're not talking about what Phelan says. He's more kind of old school, and he just tries to run the business of the House. Whenever you're fighting against somebody like Patrick, sometimes it's good to to throw some punches at him that in a place where people can actually see it.
I just, I don't like the hostility coming out of
it's primary season.
And
I
get it, and I get they're mad. I get everybody's mad, but I got to say, the one thing I like about Dade Phelan is he doesn't, every time he's attacked, he doesn't jump. Like, somebody comes out. I have a lot of respect for that. Yeah. I did want to bring up one other thing. Fox News on Twitter, and apparently the Wall Street Journal has done presidential preference. They've done a poll, Wall Street Journal poll. And apparently Biden versus Trump, Biden gets 43, Trump gets 47, which is interesting. And then you go to DeSantis versus Biden, and it's 45-45. And then you go to Nikki Haley, and it's 51% to 34%. And I mean, I've always liked Nikki Haley, but I think I've made no secret of that. But as long as we have a Republican in the White House, I'll be happy. But I really do like Nikki Haley. But that's the Wall Street Journal. So that's, that's not it's a reasonable poll. So interesting. And we have a lifetime until till the primaries are over. But that's interesting going into the holidays.
Yeah, for sure. And it's going to be interesting. I think our next episode back will be the week before. Yeah, it'll be the week before the Iowa caucuses. So we'll know more in the next few weeks as things happen over the holidays. I did see an Iowa poll, the Iowa poll, which is like the gold standard of Iowa polling, came out and Trump's at 51%. Everyone else is in the teens, but there's like 4 people splitting like less than 20% of the vote. So it's like, if they all coalesced, what would that end up looking like? Because Republicans don't have like the reordering kind of preference that Democrats did or do. It's a different system. You basically just go vote and you can listen to people talk about the candidates, if you haven't made up your mind yet. So it's interesting. We're going to need to see some stuff happen over the next few weeks, or otherwise it's just going to be Trump.
Oh, yeah. For sure. Well, yeah, and he's apparently not testifying in his court case.
Which one? I mean, his civil fraud case, yeah.
So which that's his right.
Oh,
that's
here's something that remind me, because it's New York and civil fraud. Did you see that the ACLU is representing the NRA? The ACLU, you heard that right, folks. The ACLU is representing the NRA. In one of the New York cases, when it has to do with basically the ACLU saying this is viewpoint discrimination. Like they have the New York Attorney General going after the NRA's nonprofit status because of its viewpoint, and the ACLU said we're going to come in and
wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they rarely get involved. They'll get involved in every other constitutional amendment. They rarely get involved in 2A issues. I've seen them do it once or twice in Maryland in terms of legislation, but they usually stay out of this. So for them to get involved, that's huge. So, wow, good for them. Yay. Woohoo! But hey guys, I want to, Garrett, I hope you guys have a lovely first Christmas with your little boy. And I will expect, by the way, you're overdue. I have no pictures. But I expect all the pictures. You guys can't see it, but he's kind of rolling his eyes at me. But I'm like the annoying, not really related to Garrett, but the annoying aunt that's like, where are my pictures? Because this baby is so cute.
No, the real aunts do the same thing.
Good for them. That's awesome. So I'll be the fake aunt. Mm-hmm. The frant. I'll be the frant. But I hope everybody has a great Christmas and gets everything you want and has nothing but peace and love and joy and a lovely New Year's Eve. And we will see you back in time for Garrett's birthday on January 10th. Thanks so much, everybody. Garrett, take us out.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, guys. We'll see you when I'm older.
You've been listening to the Seeing Red podcast. It's always Texas politics and beyond. We present the facts and opinions. The Seeing Red podcast with your host, Andi Turner and Garrett Fools. Thank you, and tune in next week. And please do us a favor. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode.